All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode. I am so excited about today's episode. You notice, or you will notice, that I do not have my awesome co-host here today. He had something important come up, so he won't be joining us on this episode, but that's okay because we have an amazing guest joining us. Our guest has been guiding people into Alaska's most remote wilderness for nearly 30 years. Our guest is Dan. Dan is the founder and owner of Alaska Alpine Adventures, a small award-winning outfitter out in Anchorage, Alaska. But I'm going to let him explain a little bit more about the business. Dan, welcome to the show. Why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what made you start Alaska Alpine?
Thanks, Nikki. I appreciate it. Good to be on with you. Yeah, I mean, Alaska Alpine Adventures is, this will be our 28th summer in business. So I've been doing it a long time. I like to tell myself these days that apparently this is what I do for a living. Um, yeah, so we have just, we've run through a number of iterations over the years, but we are a pure wilderness travel, adventure travel company, and we specialize in guiding folks in the most remote regions of Alaska, focusing primarily on national parks and wildlife refuges. Our itinerary is anywhere from 4 to 12 days, depending on the trip. And every single trip that we offer involves some sort of float plane or, some form of aviation to get into the backcountry. So we take people into, I mean, it's a bit cliche, but it's kind of the real Alaska.
And what made you choose like Lake Clark? I do know you have to take a plane to get into Lake Clark. Is that correct? And did you grow up in Alaska? What was that story like?
No, I grew up in California and spent my uh, young life, playing in Lake Tahoe. My family has a cabin up in Tahoe City, and went to UC Irvine. Lived in Lake Tahoe for summers through college, and then my buddy and I did a backpacking trip when I graduated from college in 1992. And we went to Lake Clark National Park. We were in restaurants, so we couldn't really leave until after Labor Day. So we contacted the Public Lands Information Center, and they sent us, mailed us the big packet with all the national park brochures. This is kind of pre-internet, and and we have, Denali was closed, and Gates of the Arctic is winter in September, and particularly like mid-September when we were going to be traveling. And we happened upon Lake Clark National Park and ended up doing a backpacking trip there, 10 days. My good buddy and I, and we'd done a bunch of kind of formative trips in the Sierra Nevada, but we thought we were ready for Alaska, and it just handed it to us. But we had an amazing experience, and 2 summers later, I came up to Lake Clark for a summer and went back to Tahoe for another winter of skiing and climbing and being a bum. And then made my move to Alaska and to Lake Clark permanent in 1995. And I lived on Lake Clark for 11 years. And I still have a place out there. And, it's my favorite place in Alaska, hands down. It's just it's such a treasure. And yeah, I just love it. I think it's the coolest place.
I know you're not the only one that's gone there and either moved there or figured out a way to get back there. I have a couple friends that went to travel, did some tours in Alaska, and then they became a tour guide in Alaska for a company a year later. So
Oh, no
it's a
way.
story I think a lot of people have.
Yep.
So yeah, Alaska pulls you in and it makes people want to come back over and over again. So you mentioned something about like many years ago. I mean, you've been around for a long time. How have you seen like marketing the company evolve? Like how did you generate business 25 years ago? What did that look like?
Well, so we just started it on a whim, right? I mean, I was living on Lake Clark. My buddy Derek was a sous chef at a lodge in Iliamna, which is just adjacent downstream from Lake Clark itself. The largest lake in Alaska is Iliamna Lake. He was at a fishing lodge, and he was a sous chef. And we were, he was my climbing partner and my ski partner. And I said, hey, I want to start a guide business. I was getting ready to turn 30, and, it just felt like Lake Clark, there were no opportunities for adventure travel, for people to come visit, notwithstanding sport fishing and hunting and whatnot, but like adventure travel was just sort of untapped at the time. And so, um, so we basically, he agreed and we threw in $5,000 each. We bought an ad in Backpacker magazine. We bought a fax machine and we got a toll-free number. And that's how we started Alaska Alpine Adventures. And our first summer we had one guest. Andy Bluter
Wow.
was his name. Never forget. And yeah, he was a recent high school graduate, and his folks had got him this trip for his high school graduation. So it was me and Andy Bluter going into the backcountry. And yeah, so I mean that was it. Marketing wasn't much more than an ad in Backpacker magazine, but we also built a website, and this is 1999, so it was a little early in the game. And we always focused on sort of technology and making sure that we could leverage technology at whatever stage it was at the time to our advantage. And I think that served us quite well over the years.
It almost sounds like you had like first mover advantage into that area. As the years have evolved, have you noticed an influx of competition? Has that, or do you guys still have that kind of area to yourselves? What does competition look like now?
Yeah, I mean, I have competition. There's no doubt about it. There are other outfitters that are kind of, in this little niche of sort of pure, wilderness travel in Alaska. You know, I don't know kind of where we stand, but I would assume that we're probably the largest at scale. We run about 65 trips a year. This year we're north of 400 guests, so we're going to have a banner year. And so yes, I have competition, but it's Alaska's such a big state, and there's just so much to see and so much to do, lifetimes really. And so there's plenty of capacity for more, right? And I don't necessarily look at what we do from a competitive standpoint, right, and who I'm competing against. It's more of how can we bring the best value and the best trip and the best experience to our guests, and that's what we really focus on 100%.
Okay, so that really tells me a lot. So because you're the largest operator out there, it's probably not something people are really questioning whether to go with you or somebody else. They look at how long you've been in business. They look at your credentials, your website. It says it all. So what are the things you focus on to create that exceptional experience? Why does that still matter to you? And what are you doing to do that?
I think, well, primarily working with really good vendors and having a really good team of guides and support staff. I mean, that's what makes this whole thing happen, right? And then, in terms of our deliverables, we really, because because we're so dialed logistically. I mean, we have an office warehouse in Anchorage where we store all of our stuff. We host our guests for orientations. I mean, we are from the moment, somebody shows up to the moment they leave, they're having an incredibly very well organized experience and well guided experience. Um, and then we try to back that up with the website as well, which is a constant thing, constantly evolving project. But really trying to make certain we manage expectations in a way that is clean, easy to navigate, isn't loaded with bloat, because I see a lot of websites are just, there's so much content that people can't decipher one end of a page to the next, and hard to find information. We really focused on clean navigation, and then of course having a reservation system with Resmark is it's been a game changer since, I think we've been with Resmark since 2012 or something like that. So yeah, a long time, and we've been through the iterations and the people, and I've had fond memories of Chip Broyles, and he and I keep in touch from time to time. So yeah, so long history with Resmark, and I just have a tremendous amount of respect for Brandon and his leadership, and he's a really outstanding sort of role model for adventure travel operators like us, because he's sort of leading the charge. So just hang on to coattails.
I love that. And for our listeners, that was completely unscripted. So thank you, Dan, for that. That was
No, yeah,
really
I
great.
mean, seriously, I mean, it's part of it. It's the reservation system. If people have to go through a 12-step process to buy a trip, then I'm sorry, they're going to go elsewhere. I mean, it's a reality. And I remember when we went to the reservation system. I mean, honestly, it was an absolute game changer. And I don't understand why more folks don't choose that. That would rather go through the 12-step process with potential guests, but they're leaving money on the table. That's just that's just it hits the bottom line, right?
Yes. And that part of the reason I think is we know our ideal customer. We know who Resmark works really well for. And you guys know that as well. So you know who the right traveler is for Alaska Alpine. Describe that person. And did you know that from the very beginning? You knew that you were looking for more of those adventure seekers. That is and do you ever target people outside of that? How do you avoid getting people who aren't that, but maybe think they are?
Well, that question, um, never really you know, we never really had our, avatar or ideal guest sort of defined. We kind of knew who they were just, through, decades of being in business. And, our marketing was really kind of loose and not very, not, didn't have much strategy behind it. Um, I'm not really a numbers guy, so I mean, I'm good at math, but it doesn't interest me, right? The numbers and the money and all that stuff, right? I mean, it does because I make a living doing this, but, um, you know, what changed was COVID and post-COVID. So COVID was a struggle. We were down 75% across the board, guest count, revenue, trip count. And then 2021 came along and the rest of the world was still closed and Alaska was open and we blew up, right? I mean, and then
I see.
we realized quickly that we were gonna face some challenges with our guests and the type of guests we were getting because we were getting people that during COVID, they fancied themselves as outdoors people because they got outside and walked around the block and suddenly, boom, they're ready to go to Alaska and put a backpack on and suffer for a bunch of days. And
I don't think people realize the remoteness of Alaska. I don't think people
No,
realize how.
and people honestly, like, cruise ship tourists were coming to us, and, I mean, we had some moments where we had to kick people off of trips, literally, like, at their expense, like, charter a float plane, "You're out of here because you are not ready," and part of that was our fault because we weren't necessarily delivering the information in a way that was as sort of targeted to make certain that we manage those expectations on the front end. So when we rebuilt the website in 2022, 2020, I think we launched in 2023, we really focused on making certain that, as soon as somebody gets on the website, they know what they're getting themselves into, right? I mean, remote, guided experiences in, the wildest places in the world, right? And so that has helped a ton, like the website, and then our pre-trip sort of information deliverables. We utilize the automated emails and Resmark, and we don't overwhelm people. We're really intentional about making certain that we're delivering the right information at the right time. But one of the things we came up with was a code of responsibility for our guests, and it's like a 15-point bullet point. Like, you better show up prepared, and you better read the material. And you're going, and this is group travel, right? You are traveling with people you don't know, and there may be somebody that doesn't read or heed any of the things that we send out, and that's to be expected, right? Even though they should have, and even though we told them to. And we might end up with somebody who's a jerk on a trip you have to tolerate. And then the last one is don't be a jerk. So, or the jerk, and so that was another sort of deliverable that we felt was really important because the last thing we need, given the remote nature of our experiences and how far we are from advanced medical care or a road, that we have to have people that are ready to participate in the experience fully, both like sort of physically, obviously, with the right gear, but also emotionally ready to really experience something that's magical and transformational, because
Transformational.
that's really what it
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's transformational stuff. It's not
It,
for
it's
everybody, and but we change people's lives. It's like I often, at least once a summer, somebody comes up and just gives me a hug and thanks me, right? And I mean, it's emotional for me too, right? Because I'm really fortunate to be able to share, Alaska in a really authentic way, something that really turned my cranks 30 years ago and changed my life. So it's quite fortunate. It's fun.
That's amazing. That the energy bleeds into, I'm sure, your customers. And I'm sure 99%, I mean, maybe you actually have a stat, but that is bringing in the right customers. And those people who do come that aren't the right customers, yes, if they leave you a 1 star, I'm not saying that they have, but those 5 stars, those dozens of other 5 stars are going to trump that by a million. And you're
Yeah, I
right.
wish we did a better job at recruiting people to give reviews. I'm not very good at that either.
Okay.
But I think in the end, we're doing a better job at that. But most of our reviews are totally unsolicited. It's like
That's right.
awesome. I mean, that's what we prefer.
Well, I saw a Facebook post yesterday on Sunday, and it was a tour operator that suggested I don't want to ask for Google reviews anymore. I don't want to because they're deceitful. And I went to a restaurant last week, and I understand what he's saying because I went to the restaurant because they had thousands of reviews, and I realized after dinner, of course, they said, leave us a review. He stood right over the table and said, if you leave us a review, I'll give you a free dessert or a drink or something along those lines. And that's
Wow.
happened to me a few
Okay.
times. So it's almost like these reviews that people not said, I'm not saying that all tour operators do that by no means, but it's almost hard
Yeah.
for the consumer to believe reviews. But when you are creating a transformational experience like you are doing, you do not have to ask for that review. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You should still ask for a
Yeah.
review if
Yeah.
you think it's necessary, but those people genuinely want to leave that review because they want to change other people's lives. I went on a transformational tour experience in up Kilimanjaro, and it changed my life forever. I'm going to pass that down to my children and their children, and it's just going to
Yeah.
stay with me forever. And without questioning, I don't think the tour operator asked me for a review, but I am just screaming to people, you have to do this. You have to. It will change your life. So
Yeah.
when you are getting the right customer and they're getting so excited and you've changed their life, they're going to be telling every single one of their friends and families and everything. Because the reality is, do you have reoccurring customers? I would assume not because it is like a once in a lifetime thing. Or do you have
We have a
repeat
lot.
guests?
We have a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, we have, some years up to 20% are repeat guests. So, yeah, so and like, I've got a couple who's coming up this summer and this is their 20th anniversary. So I did the Turquoise Glacier High Route with them in 2006 and they're coming up for their 20th year. They didn't come up for COVID, but, and they've done like 25 trips because some year they double down, right? And they're a super cool couple from Minneapolis, St. Paul, no kids, they're retired. They both worked for 3M their entire careers. They're in their late 60s now, but we've been going and poking around doing new hard backpacking trips across Alaska for like 20 years, 20 plus years. And we always go somewhere new and different. This year we're going into the Arctic and going to go check out a new area that I haven't been into. And it's so fun, right? And that's what I get to do. I still get to guide trips, but, I'm a little more selective about what I choose to do with my time when I'm guiding. So yeah, yeah, we get a lot of people, when we go to 6 of the 8 national parks in Alaska. So, Alaska is just a life list, right? And so people and this has been a new sort of post COVID. I mean, it's always been a factor in people that with people that travel with us, right? Is checking off all the national parks, right? And the two most
Oh, yeah.
difficult national parks and most expensive national parks to get to are Gates of the Arctic and Kobuk Valley. And
Okay.
so, and the last 3 national parks in the entire, on everybody's list are Kobuk Valley, Gates of the Arctic, and American Samoa. Now, we don't guide trips in American Samoa, though I'd love to go there and check it out. I hear it's beautiful. But yeah, so these, national park list checkers, I mean, that's a thing, right? And so because we go to 6 of the 8 and the 6 that we go to are very remote and you've got to get to them by a small airplane. then, that does lend itself to repeat guests. So it's kind of fun. And then people get to know our style of travel and, the trust factor. And then Alaska gets in their blood and they just say, oh my, this is just unbelievable, and I just got to see more. And so people just, sign up because they want to go do another trip, right? Or they're just like masochists and they want to, go suffer with a backpack for 10 days and, carry an unruly burden on their back and sleep
Yeah.
on the ground because that's what we do.
That's me. That is so me. I can't imagine anything better in life for my vacation. That sounds
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, and you talk about national park people who check them off. My husband is starting that this summer.
Oh, right on.
He's from England and we live in France, but we're flying over into America, and I'm staying in the Grand Canyon on a Western River trip, and he's going to start traveling all through. He's going to try as much as he can in like 14 days, but I don't think he hasn't seen the West Coast, or he hasn't seen much in America, so it's going to
Okay.
be eye-opening, and he's going with him and a friend. So he's going to
Right
start,
on.
but if he does Alaska, I have to be there. Of course, I want to see all
No,
the national parks, but like he can't, he's not allowed to go there without me. That's, yeah, that's
right on. Well, you
awesome.
guys know where to find us.
Yes. Oh, we do. Absolutely. What have been some of your biggest, we always talk about wins. Are there any failures that you've noticed throughout the years that you say, "Oh, I tried this and it really didn't work"? It could be marketing, it could be guest experience, just anything in general. Have you noticed something that just doesn't work or didn't work for you guys?
Um, what what has not worked well over the years are, working with like third party, online travel agencies, right? And we worked with REI Adventures for like 13 years, and we worked with Modern Adventure and World Expeditions and Mountain Travel Sobek, and typically it's really tough because they kind of maintain proprietary control over the contact info. So all of everything is funneled through them in terms of guest sort of pre-trip, expectations and all that stuff. And oftentimes, more often than not, we just got guests that just weren't prepared. And the REI relationship was great. It actually helped us grow our business, and that was a relationship that just came to a natural kind of conclusion because of the demand had changed. We were running multi-sport van tours with REI, in addition to some wilderness stuff. But really, what persisted were these van tours, right? Now that market is totally saturated, and we're so glad to be done with vans and hotels, and at least at the scale we were running them. And so so I found that doesn't work, and we primarily sell direct anymore. And we work with a few travel agencies, and but I'm very, very intentional about who we develop relationships with, like an OTA that wants to sell into our stuff. It's like I just approach it with a healthy degree of skepticism, and then try to build trust from there, and see if we can come to an arrangement where we make certain that our deliverables are getting to their guests in a way that we all can sort of expect, right? When the guest shows up on our door. So that would be one sort of. I wouldn't consider it a fail necessarily, but it definitely has changed the direction of who we market to and how we operate, right? And the direct to consumer is the best for us, right? It just works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're going direct to consumer, what are some of the lead sources you are relying on other than referral, obviously? But are you guys doing much on social media, paid ads, email marketing? Are you working on your SEO strategy? What are you doing marketing across the board
Yes,
outside of what we
yes, 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 and yes.
awesome?
um, yeah, we do social media. It's not front and center of what we do. and we could do a better job there for sure. Uh, but that's it's just I'm not a huge fan of social media, like in general, right? I lurk on social media. I don't necessarily participate in in social media. Um, so I'm a consumer, right, rather than a participant. But I think we could do a better job with social media. We've got a guy in the UK who does our sort of AdWords and our Google stuff, and our website guy here in Anchorage helps with sort of website updates and whatnot. And we do quite a bit of email marketing, at least one email or two emails a month, and I do that. So that's kind of, I kind of handle the marketing and
You do great.
sales and all of that stuff. So which is, fun. I'm getting to know, Canva a little better and MailChimp. And so I get frustrated with technology. So like, I just get angry that I can't figure it out like right away. It's not like taking the tape measure to the piece of wood and cutting the piece of wood on the
Yeah,
line, right? It's a, it's a bit more
figuring
complex
it
than that,
out.
right?
Yeah. Well,
And I'm,
you're
a
using
little
the
old and I'm a little, grumpy and maybe, not necessarily as patient as I used to be, but I'm getting better. And so the email marketing stuff is getting more and more gratifying and definitely works. Like it totally works. Like unbelievable. I sent out an email like a few days ago to our, we call it our expedition club, right? It's folks that have traveled with us before or have signed up for, on our website and a little, call to action. And, yeah, so it's like a couple thousand people and say, hey, listen, book this week. You got this week to book and lock into 2026 pricing before prices go up on Friday, actually. And I think we took like 10 reservations. I mean, just like that.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. One
Well,
email. So, and we haven't even
that's
sent it out. The whole list of 12,000 some odd people is going out on Friday and, announcing the 2020, seven
so
dates that are currently live. Like anybody can, book now and
mm,
get it, lock into,
it's not in front
2026
of their
pricing.
face yet.
Yeah, it's not in front of their face yet. So we can anticipate more and yeah, so it's really effective. And it's yeah,
How
it's gratifying.
how did you grow your list to 12,000? Where did you get those people from?
Well, it started, we used to go to like the International Adventure Travel and Outdoor Show in Chicago, and we went to IATOS or a different one. That was IATOS. That was in New York. And there was another one in Chicago. We used to go to trade shows, and set up a booth and have pictures and sign up forms, with your name and your email address. And that was like years of doing that, like early years, going to trade shows, collecting names. And that built our list by a few hundred. And then taking people out, like just guests and retaining that information and then website contacts. And, it used to be like you take it down, people call the toll free number, you pick up the phone, you write down their information or type it in. And then, we'd have to enter that information into an Excel spreadsheet and, very, cut and paste old school. And now we just generate leads through the website and automations. And I mean, it's easy, right? And it's effective. And so, yeah, so we got 12,000 people and, we send an email out and some people unsubscribe but then, it never really the list hasn't really grown substantially because, that's a lot of people and a lot of people are just going to say, I get too many damn emails. So I'm out. I just
But
trying to like,
when they're ready for that trip, your email has
yeah.
gotten in front of them so many times that they'll know who to
Mhm.
contact. And the one thing I want our audience to listen to is I received some of your emails. Actually, Candace forwarded to me. I need to subscribe so that I'm getting them. And they are very much like personable. They're from you, at least the one I received. They're very much they're easy to read. I could tell that you didn't just plug something into AI to write something. So, what's your strategy behind writing the copy? How are you developing what is necessary and what kind of do you know what tone you're using? Like, why are they so good?
Well, I mean, I think we do use AI, not necessarily for content. I mean, we do use it for content, but for writing, like it's generally my voice, and I'll fine tune it with Claude. But we took, in fact, you guys hosted a webinar with Kelsey Toner over at Guest Focus, right? And it was an AI webinar a year and a half ago or something. And it literally, like, Nico, my general manager, Nick Allen, who's been on a number of the webinars, right? He's a regular participant. He's awesome. He was just like geeking out on the whole AI thing. And we created our avatar, like we went through that whole marketing, Excel spreadsheet, and we created our own. And then I got on with Kelsey and took the 45-minute call, and then I just signed up for his coaching program, and I was in that program for 9 months. With Casey Hanisco, who was formerly, ATTA. And so she and I had met in the past, but she was awesome. And it was like a really, I really believe in what Kelsey's doing over there at Guest Focus. It's really powerful. And he's just such a great character and face for his business. And he always has a smile. And he's just, I don't know how that guy works harder than anybody I know, or he's figured out how to like optimize his time better than I can. But anyway, so, we've been able to come up with content quite easily. And we now are far more targeted in how we are messaging. But I try, I'm trying to, create more of a, sort of personal angle with our emails, because I don't want it to necessarily be salesy. I want to be able to sell trips, but I want to provide information too, in a way that's compelling and that people will read. And so that's been my new kind of, focus, is really creating, we're not a school, people are going to learn when they take a trip with us, right? Because our guides are pretty good at natural history and whatnot. But I want to provide people with like sort of content that they can learn something about Alaska, or learn something about the experience. And, the last one I sent out, with Paul Piff at UC Irvine, and, the science behind the feelings of awe, right? Like, what does that feel like? Well, it's quantifiable, right? So that kind of stuff, right? It's just it's really fun. I'm going to be sending out an email this week about a documentary about Lake Clark National Park that is just absolutely fantastic. It's just wonderful. And it just so ties in perfectly what Paul Piff about Lake Tahoe, and, Lake Tahoe, Lake Clark connection, that is my connection. But, it's kind of, I'm going to try to weave those two together in a way that is, is educational, informative, and really cool, right? It's really cool stuff. So,
And it makes
yeah.
sense. And what you're
Yeah.
doing is you're evoking emotion. So when you open up an email, people, it makes me, it baffles me when people say email marketing doesn't work anymore. And just because you might throw, a lot of your emails that you get every day away, or you might unsubscribe, like the few that you do read are provoking emotion. And that's why you're reading it. I have so many emails I keep unread, so that when I do have time, I could go back and read it or get an update, so it's working. What you're doing is
Yeah.
amazing.
It
So
works.
keep doing it. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan, I have one more question for you that I love to
Yeah.
ask every guest that comes on. What would you tell another tour operator who is just starting out today? Now, you have so many years of experience. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. What would you tell them?
I think first and foremost, I'd say don't quit your day job. Right? It's, I I think with AI, um, the opportunities have never been easier for somebody to start a business, right? Particularly, even an adventure travel business. Just the back end, the creation, content creation, and the website, and all the tools that we have, with Resmark. And I think it's easier to be to wear many hats, right? And pull it off, in a way that appears to be, that, you've got multiple people in the room doing, one person's job. So I think the opportunities are there. It's just gotten so expensive. Insurance is unbelievable. And it's a really big expense for us and goes up every year. I don't know why. It just, it's like gas prices right now. It's just this never ending escalation of expense, right? And tough to recover, right? Without raising prices. And that's also, risky. So, so I think don't quit your day job is it's because it takes a while to make money in this business. I didn't really, I mean, it was like 7 years before I was able to like work on Alaska Alpine Adventures full time. I mean, I worked on it full time, but I had a full time job, and that was quite flexible, but nonetheless, I mean, I was in the trades, and I mean, it worked. It was it allowed us to kind of grow and start making some money. And I had a business partner until 2008, the guy that uh, was the chef. I bought him out in 2008, and I was sole proprietor, and yeah, so, it takes a long time, and, it's not easy, and, the permitting is just so onerous. I mean, it's just one of those things, like, where government gets a bad name, I mean, it earns it, right? I worked for the National Park Service for a number of years. I was a maintenance guy, right? So I kinda I've seen it from both sides, right, as an employee and a, you know, commercial operator, and it's really onerous, and I think that's one area where we can do a better United States can do a much better job. Um so I think, there's some significant hurdles, right? I think the setup is much easier with AI, but I think the deliverables, and then, you gotta have some sort of place to stage, right? You gotta have an office or a warehouse. And, it's just like the expenses are daunting. And, it's more challenging in Alaska because we basically have 100 days of operating season a year, right? And so we don't do any winter stuff. We used to, but stopped winter stuff in 2017. But the winter stuff was more just kind of fun than it was actual, like, profitable. Um, and so that's challenging too, right? I mean, you've got to figure out a way to make money year round with a 100-day operating season. We've been able to do that because we collect deposits, year round. So it just keeps the cash flow going. Um, so yeah, I mean, I shudder to think that, like 30 years ago, what I would have done, would I have, how would I be living as a young person today, 30-year-old today, like trying to start this business? I don't know if I would have, I don't know if I would have been able to stomach it. And I have a pretty high threshold for discomfort.
Sometimes it's easier to not know what you're getting into until you're in it, and then you have to figure your
Yeah.
way. And when you are figuring your way, you figure it out. It's
Yeah.
like you take a step back and you're like, how did I do that? But you did it. And I think
Yeah.
that for anybody listening, like, you can do it. Once you're in it, you just gotta figure it out. Just go and keep
Oh,
doing more things.
there's a lot of figuring. Yes, there's no shortage of just figuring it out. Like, all right. I mean, Alaska wilderness travel is such a great metaphor for life. Like, you don't know what the next pass is going to look like. It's just one foot in front of the other, and it may not look like it goes, but then there's always a way, right? And so it's kind of Alaska. It was such a, like a backpacking trip would be such a great metaphor for life, right? Hard times, easy times, magical times, painful times, right? And all of the above. It's part of the life experience, and it's very akin to starting and growing a business, right? All of those things are part of it, right? It's not easy.
Is anything in life, if you want something, you gotta work for it. Oh, well, Dan, I cannot thank you enough. Your passion for what you do is exactly why I love being in this industry. I admire you and everything you're building and you have built and what you're doing for your customers. I cannot wait to visit one day. I promise I will make my way out there. So thank you for coming on the show, Dan. I appreciate you. And for all of our listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, even though we were missing my second half, Greg. But if you did enjoy this episode, please, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed, left a review, shared this podcast with another tour operator so that we can continue you spreading this and growing the Tour Operator Growth Podcast. We'll see you next week.